Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another podcast. My name is Isabel. I am the Functional Food Ingredient Sales Representative at Barrington Nutritionals. Today's podcast episode is extra special because Herbal Pharmacist David Foreman and I get to speak with Natalie Shmulik, the CEO of the Hatchery. Natalie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Our
This is
pleasure.
super exciting. When I read what your company does, I was like, wow, that's got to be so much fun to work with. I'm fascinated to learn more.
Yeah, I'm excited to share more, and I'm very lucky I get to do what I do every day.
So Natalie is the go-to resource for launching successful food and beverage businesses. She has a wide range of experience working with supermarkets, culinary publications, consumer packaged good companies, and food service establishments. She is a regular contributor to the Food Business News, has been featured in publications such as Forbes, Food Dive, WGN Radio, WTTW, and Chicago Woman. So Natalie, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you. Would you like to add on and give the audience some more background about the Hatchery?
Sure. So the Hatchery is a nonprofit food and beverage incubator. We're located on the west side of Chicago in East Garfield Park. We're very proud of the community that we're in. We wanted to be in a location where we can support individuals who could best thrive with the resources we can provide. So in East Garfield Park, it has some of the highest employment rates, limited access to nutritious foods, but an abundant array of entrepreneurs who are eager to get their products to market. So we're just really happy to be in that community and to be able to provide that support. A big part of our mission is really to create more diversity, equity, and inclusion in the industry, because that's really how innovation comes to play. Is the more ideas, the more people, the more representation we have, the more we can innovate together. So we're just really excited to be able to support that kind of diversity in the industry. And within our building, we have 54 private kitchens, a large shared kitchen, co-working and office space, ideation space. We work with about 200 food and beverage entrepreneurs. And then we have incredible partners and supporters like yourselves who make things even more possible. And your support and your expertise really helps innovation move along even faster. So yeah, very thankful to be able to work with you.
Necessity fuels the invention in your world, basically,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
that's right.
Very cool. Good market too.
So while reviewing your background, I was curious to know how you got into all of this after studying gastronomy at Boston University and running your own restaurant. What made you decide to pivot your career to starting the Hatchery and working with food beverage entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think starting a restaurant was probably my first foray into really first and foremost appreciating the world of entrepreneurship. I think sometimes we underestimate the challenges that entrepreneurs face. There's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of, mental angst that you go through. And it was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had, but one of the most challenging at the same time. I had a lot to learn. There's so much unpredictability. And I think, when you're managing people and you're managing food in particular, as you know, you're dealing with perishable products. There is a connection that's made between food and people that is very special, but it can also be very personal as somebody who's feeding the public. And so I really did fall in love with the space. I've always been in love with the food and beverage industry as a whole, but then I realized there was more under the surface, and I wanted to get out and I wanted to learn more. And so at one point, after the restaurant was doing well, I just decided I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to better understand human psychology and the anthropology of food and why we eat the way we eat and how we built communities around food sources. So I ended up selling the restaurant and I moved to Boston to do my master's in gastronomy. And that's where I really started to peel back the layers of why is food so important to who we are and why does it define us in so many ways? And while I was doing that, I gained so many experiences getting to work with entrepreneurs. And I really started to fall in love. The first company I got to work with was a cold brew tea company called Evie Tea. She's doing amazing things still. And when I was working with her, again, I felt I understood her trials and tribulations and her journey as an entrepreneur. But I wanted to not only support that side of it, but I also wanted to be able to provide resources and to help her business grow, because there are so many challenges and so many barriers. And I just fell in love with the space. I realized, especially when it comes to early stage entrepreneurs, you're dealing with very creative, very quick thinking, stubborn individuals in many ways. But there's no other place I'd want to be. And I just felt I could hopefully add some value there, pulling from my learnings and learnings that I've seen from other entrepreneurs, and then just building a community of like-minded individuals who can collaborate with each other and support one another.
I feel like you were living in the space of Shark Tank, but you didn't have the billions of dollars, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No,
Yeah.
seriously. I'm a Shark Tank junkie.
I love Shark Tank. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm an entrepreneur too, so maybe that's why I get I kind of get interested in the stories. But you're so right. Like an entrepreneur really, we can be really stubborn, especially it's our baby. So our baby's always prettier. It's better looking. What I said prettier, so that counts. But it costs more. There's a whole thing of like you got to dial down the pride sometimes with your entrepreneurship to really get moving forward. So it's kind of cool. You're in that world without having to spend billions of dollars, right?
Yeah, and it is. We're very lucky because we've received a lot of funding as a nonprofit to make what we have available. But I do think it's so important. There's a language that you have to speak when talking with entrepreneurs. And there are so many resources out there, but it is challenging sometimes if you come from a corporate world or if you don't understand entrepreneurship on that same level. Some of the advice or suggestions may not resonate with entrepreneurs. And so we really spend a lot of time trying to speak the language of entrepreneurship. So even in the resources and educational materials that we share, spend a lot of time trying to capture it in as concise a fashion as we can. So what are the 3 takeaways? What are the visual components that these entrepreneurs need to see? The best advice I was ever given a long time ago, and I still to this day use it, was if you're going to work with an entrepreneur, if you're going to give them advice, you have to make them think they came up with it. So, it's true. And every time, I'll have a conversation and then I'll start to recite something to them and I'll say, that's kind of what you suggested and what you just said. And it's much easier to then absorb that and going, oh yeah, that is what I'm aiming for. And that is the approach I'm taking. So it is important to understand how do I effectively communicate with entrepreneurs.
Sorry, I'm still laughing on the whole
psychology.
I wonder how many people played that. I wonder how many people played that psycho thing on me, man. Without me knowing it. So anyway, right. Sorry, Isabel, go ahead.
Oh, running an incubator, the spotlight is always on the entrepreneurs you work with. But I think what you're doing, the Hatchery as a whole, is an inspirational story, and so much has been accomplished in a short amount of time. The Hatchery was founded in 2015, working at a shared space to building the 67,000 square foot facility in 2018. In a matter of 3 years, you built up this organization, have supported dozens of food entrepreneurs and brought new opportunity to local Chicago community. And as a Chicago native, you have my full support.
Thank you, Isabel. And you were part of the journey too. So it's just so great to see how you yourself have come out of the incubator and moved on to so many great things, but you were there really in the very beginning.
Yeah, I interned in 2016, David.
I think I saw that on your LinkedIn profile. Yeah, it's fascinating. So it's really cool. The background that you have, Isabel, it was, to me, it was fascinating that, this is like our first, guest on the podcast, and that you chose Natalie, and it really makes sense. Very, she's been there, done that, and still doing it. And because of the people you're exposed to, Natalie, you're already starting outside the box, right? And so I'm really glad to be a part of this today with you.
Thank you so much.
So the Hatchery is always hosting workshops, classes, networking events, and I love getting involved whenever I can. And I really enjoyed one of the recent branch network meetings you hosted. And during the meeting, you said consumers are seeking immunity products in response to the pandemic. So how do you advise companies to market a health claim like immunity? What is the best approach to consumer education? For example, would you recommend strategic packaging using 2D barcodes or informative LinkedIn posts?
Yeah, I that's a great question. I do think, all the data we've seen is really focused on immunity. That is completely understandable. The pandemic is a health crisis. So first and foremost, we start to become hyper aware of our own personal health. And when you're isolated and there are so many uncertain things happening, the first thing you want to do is you search for ways to take care of yourself and take care of your health. So consumers are grasping for any functional ingredient that will provide boosted immunity, trying to find products, relying on restaurants and other resources to be able to have immune boosting benefits. And I think when it comes to brands incorporating any kind of functional ingredient, health claim, whether immunity or otherwise, I think the first thing you always have to do is do your research. I know that a lot of times it's very tempting to kind of slap a label on there or make a claim. That can be very dangerous, as you know. So I think the first thing is doing research on what does this ingredient do, working with your ingredient supplier, trying to get the information around what studies have taken place, what efficacy does the ingredient have at what quantities, understanding what you can and can't say. And that's why it's always good to partner with your suppliers across the board. So it is essential to really understand why you're incorporating the ingredient, what claim you're looking to make, and does it align with your brand? Because maybe you have a brand that is oriented around better for you or being a health conscious consumer, but it's also possible that that has nothing to do with your brand. Your brand is focused on, maybe you're a dairy-free product that tastes great. You don't need to start putting in, turmeric and all kinds of other things and ginseng into your product. So it has to align with the brand. You have to do your research, and you have to make sure that if you are going to make a claim, the claim is validated. So, we have attorneys that we work with who can support claims and help you navigate it. There's certain language that you need to use. You also have to be careful, even if you're not making the claim on your package, but you're making the claim on your website or social media, that can also get you into trouble. So there's things we can say, there's things we can't say. A lot of people were familiar with a lawsuit that came about with a granola company that listed its ingredients, and its first ingredient was love. And, they got in trouble because love is not an ingredient. It's very romantic, but it's not an ingredient. So unfortunately, or fortunately, we do live in a space where there are very strict regulations. We have to be conscious of that. But I do think that if you have a health claim, if you have ingredients that can boost not just, physical health, but cognitive health, which is very, very front of mind right now, I guess pun intended, that
I was wondering if you did that on purpose or not. So
yeah,
I was like, very creative.
There you go. Yeah,
right on. You get bonus points today.
Exactly. Yeah, check. But I think that it's important to really use the right terms and educate your customer as well, because, and yes, Isabel, to your point, there's only so much room you have on pack. So choose your words wisely. Real estate is very valuable. So think carefully about what needs to stand out. And in some ways, the health claim may be that thing. And if not, there's new tools now. Again, your website, your social media, 2D barcodes, QR codes, everything across the board, where you can find a lot more information about a brand. But it's great to, if that's a key differentiator, then highlight it. That's so important these days, is to find out what sets you apart from everyone else in the market.
Do you feel like, I run into this issue in the natural product industry a lot, and it's like people argue over whose responsibility it is to provide that educational information, because in the immune space specifically right now, I've been getting asked to do a lot of webinars, and people are shocked when a product says supports immune health, and most consumers think supports immune health means, hey, I'm going to not get sick,
right?
Because I take this, right? Isn't that like the majority? I would say, yet supporting immune health might be really something that's anti-inflammatory, which really has nothing to do with me getting a cold or a flu or whatever. And so, in your position, whose like responsibility is it to provide that education? I don't feel like it's the raw material supplier. I feel like it's the company selling the product to the consumer. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's no right answer, I hate to say. I think we've come across that in a variety of ways too, where, in the restaurant space, especially during the pandemic, restaurants were concerned, they were going out of business. And then everybody started to realize that the margins were next to none. And there wasn't really that products and menu items were not necessarily priced the way they should be. We know that traditionally in the coffee industry, paying 99 cents for a cup of coffee does not support a strong supply chain, does not support the farmers. And then there's a question of whose responsibility is it? And it always seems to fall on the entrepreneurs a lot of times, or the brands, but there's only so far they can go, because the more information you share, the more the consumer becomes overwhelmed, because we do know we've got consumers now who don't necessarily have the time to invest in understanding, reading, and learning, because a lot of times if you dig deep enough, the information's there, but a lot of people don't want to go through pages and pages and pages of information on different websites. So I think it is a group effort. I think within the industry, I think it's important for everybody to play their role, including the customers. I think if you find something that works for you, it tastes good, you feel good when you consume this product, tell your friends, tell them why, do some research, dive into it, try to understand. I know there's too much information out there in some ways, so it's hard to sift through what is truly accurate and what is not. But I think as an industry, we do have to work together to educate on why things are priced the way they are, why certain ingredients have efficacy in certain areas over others. I think if we're able to collaborate and share that information, then it'll make it a little bit easier for everyone, and especially for the consumer.
If we were in the same room right now, I'd give you a high five.
Oh, thanks.
We'll have to make it a virtual high five. There we go.
There you go.
That was cool, because, I feel like sometimes I'm blowing, smoke and people don't, and I'm not. Like, it's just, we're all in this together. At the end of the day, like, we're trying to help. I mean, if you're in the food industry, you're in the health industry, and it could be good health or bad health, but either way, same thing, dietary supplement. And it's like, we all are in this together. Like, we're truly trying to be part of the health answer. We all need. So I was really very, very happy to hear your answer.
Thank you.
Maybe a high 10, I don't know.
So another trend you had mentioned was mental and cognitive health.
Mm-hmm.
How are brands looking to improve their ingredients?
Yeah, this is a wide open space right now. And I am beyond excited that we're finally in a place where, one, I think people are comfortable sharing some of their challenges, because I think first and foremost is being able to provide an environment where people feel comfortable talking about challenges they're facing, especially during a pandemic, where it doesn't matter what your situation is or was, whether you have a family, whether you're single, whatever you were going through, everybody was going through something, and they all dealt with different challenges of navigating a pandemic. So I think one of the items that we ultimately realized was that we have to be able to function as a society. And we do come from a culture where everything is work, 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 absorb as much time as possible. And if you look at a lot of the ingredients that are on the market, caffeines and energy bars, it was all triggering towards this, you need to do more, you need to be more productive. And it's so interesting because I'm reading Michael Pollan's new book right now, This Is Your Mind on Plants. And he talks specifically about coffee and this idea that, coffee was really designed. The reason coffee wasn't labeled as a drug is because it supports the work economy. It allowed people to become more productive. So now that we realize you can't function at your best ability if you're on all the time. And so it's so interesting to now see these new products that are saying, slow down, this will help you sleep. The cannabis space is playing a big role in this as well. So we're seeing a lot of ingredients that are now creating, having calming effects. So it allows you, it's more than just, it's kind of rest and reset right now, in addition to get up and go. And I think a lot of brands are recognizing the value in this and incorporating ingredients that have these functions. Stress relief, anxiety reduction, sleep enhancement. These are all very, very important tools right now and functions that we're looking for. So I think it's really important. I think there's such an open space right now, and I know entrepreneurs are hungry to really find more of these functional ingredients that allow their customers to feel this relief. So I'm excited to see what comes down the market and what new ingredients start to be able to support these efforts.
It's interesting because what you really spoke about is something that I feel, especially coming out of the pandemic, is this whole mental health, mental wellness. Everybody talks about mental illness, and I'd rather talk about mental health. And you mentioned, you basically mentioned the three big ones, and they're all interconnected. Of sleep. If you don't sleep well, you usually don't handle stress well, or you're stressed out, or vice versa. You have stress, you don't sleep as well. And then they both have this play on cognition, your ability to concentrate and focus and function, at whatever level. So they really are very interconnected. And I'm actually very hopeful, because one of the things I think that we really need more of, and we need less capsules and tablets, and we need more food-like things that we can incorporate into my lifestyle or your lifestyle. Whether it's a grab and go bar that's going to, keep me cognitively sharp, but without the caffeine, or it's something that's going to be a good adaptogen to help me just stay kind of calm and relaxed throughout my stressful day, or, a little mini, beverage before I go to bed. I'm not talking about a cocktail here. I'm talking about some botanical, botanical or nutraceutical food type of thing. But we need to have, and that's why, Natalie, it's exciting to have you on, with us today, because at the end of the day, like, we all have pill fatigue, and pills don't really easily fit into my daily life.
Sure.
And so if it's something, that, I don't carry a purse, so I don't have, but, like, if I could have 3 or 4 whatever's in my back, I do travel with a backpack, it's cool to have that. And, and so it's fascinating to hear that people are actually migrating to looking at doing creative foods that also provide a functional, nutritional, nutraceutical ingredient along with it.
Yeah, I think that's where, probiotics and prebiotics are playing such a valuable role right now, and seeing brands start to incorporate, different strains. And people forget that serotonin is produced in the stomach. And so in order to be able to allow us to function and feel good, we have to focus on the stomach, and that comes with what are we digesting, what are we consuming. So I'm just as thrilled as you are to know that we're trying to find ways to incorporate some of these beneficial ingredients into the things we eat day to day.
And like you both said, it all ties together, immunity, gut health, cognitive health, mental health, it all comes together. And I think.
Yeah, they all play together for sure. They're all in the same sandbox, for sure.
So Natalie, do you think flavors such as guava, mango, acai, currants, and carrots are trending because they're unique, or because consumers associate these flavors with health and functionality?
I think it's a combination. I think that the tropical flavors and the exploratory flavors per se, so, the currents, so Eastern Europe and Hawaii and Asia Pacific, and and Middle East, we're seeing a lot of these beautiful flavors come to be. A lot of that is because we haven't been traveling, and we're trying to travel more through our palates right now as consumers. So we're hungry for these experiences, but there are great functional benefits to a lot of these ingredients as well, and a lot of new fruits and vegetables, which is exciting, that are not part of our regular repertoire. So it's nice to see how these ingredients are being used. I think cherries in particular, there are so many benefits, and especially going back to, sleep and rest. So I think it's great to see how these ingredients are being incorporated. Kefir, going back to probiotics. So I think that there are functional benefits, but then there are you always have to have something that tastes good. The more it tastes good, the more people will want to eat it. So I think it's kind of both are very important. And I would say it starts with the flavor, and then the functionality is an added benefit for consumers.
They're all colorful ingredients. So when I first heard them, I was like, oh, it's kind of tying back to Eat the Rainbow. But I think you're right. I think people are seeking interesting flavors. And I think, like you said, people want things to taste really good too, in addition to getting the health benefits.
Well, it's interesting, Natalie, you brought up the cherry. I on a webinar I gave last week, I chimed in because, people were talking about melatonin. And I said, well, melatonin is really a drug, to be honest with you. It's not natural. Granted, my body produces it. But I said that like tart cherries actually have a reasonable amount of naturally occurring melatonin. And so, and the nice thing is, Isabel, you just said it, like, so you can add something that actually provides a cool color, a cool flavor, and is functional. Or I'm a big saffron fan. And actually one of my clients just gave me, I'm going to guess $5,000 worth of saffron to bring home with me. But the cool thing with that is saffron actually, if you consume it regularly, stimulates the body to produce more melatonin. So, it's kind of cool. And you get a cool, you get a unique flavor profile, you get some cool colors. So it's nice if you can use these functional flavoring agents, we'll call them, right? I'm not in your space. So would you call them a functional flavoring agent or not? Can you, I guess?
I don't know. I'm probably,
I said, I don't live in the food space. So I feel like I'm, probably the wrong guy to be. I'm probably the first best person to do the interview because I don't know anything. Anyway, that's kind of cool. So
you know a lot more than you let on then, because I think it's always fun to, and for us too, I think it's always great to have conversations with people who come from different backgrounds and different experiences, because we all learn so much. And I think that's the most interesting thing. It's, you never want to have a conversation with someone who knows the exact same things that you do. So I always appreciate being able to learn from somebody else.
Awesome.
Well, shifting gears, in the branch network, you caught my attention with Reimagine Breakfast. Could you give us a little bit more insight about what this is?
Yeah, of course. And, first and foremost, we are going to be doing a panel, I believe, on March 31st. So we invite everybody to join. As being part of our branch network, you have access to our networking events for free, but we're very excited. We've been doing a lot of research on the breakfast space, and there have been a lot of shifts. Some trying to get away from sugar in North America. We are prone to trying to look at very high sugar breakfasts with cereals. And again, I think it's everyone's preference. There's nothing wrong. It's all balanced. So there's a place for everything. But now we're seeing some incorporation of other influences. So we're seeing some savory breakfast. We're seeing some new breakfast items. So there's a big Japanese influence right now. In Japanese culture, you see a lot of savory breakfast. So you have soups, you have onigiri. So really nice savory breakfasts. We're also seeing a lot of new flavors. Belgian Boys just launched their new products. They're doing kind of Belgian style crepes and mini pancakes. And so there's a bigger variety right now. And I think part of it is because people are able to spend a little bit more time, where we've shifted away with work from home of running out the door and just quickly chugging a coffee and eating a donut. Now people really want to sit down and enjoy their breakfast, feel fueled for the day. So they're looking for more nutrient dense products, but also new worldly flavors in their breakfast items as well. So we'll definitely be talking about some, on our panel. We actually have Ashley from Mush, who has the Overnight Oats Company. We've got Belgian Boys. We've got Faya, which is a Middle Eastern restaurant here. They'll be talking about Middle Eastern breakfast. So definitely tune in. It'll be a really fun discussion.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I hope more international influence disrupts the American kitchen. I think that's how we innovate. And Mush was right across from you at the Fancy Food Show.
Yes, they were. They have a great product.
It's interesting because I do travel a lot of the country a lot, and I'll be in an office place somewhere in the morning, and they've brought like a real legit meal with them to their office space, and then they'll reheat it when they're there at their desk, because they, obviously maybe time management's not a good thing for them in the morning, so they actually leave the house, but they're taking something that's actually a whole food with them.
I love that.
Yeah, and I was like, and I don't ever see that around like in the US, and I feel like it's something that is migrating, like you just said, Isabel, like migrating from other cultures. Plus, it's really cool to see those foods be integrated. Because like one of the things you talked about, Natalie, you know, pre and probiotics, there are cultures that would never think about supplementing with a probiotic or prebiotic because it's part of their everyday lifestyle.
Yeah, it's already there.
Yeah, I was in India and they're like, "Do you want curds after dinner?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And you know, I'm like, "Oh, I get it." I'm like, "All right, that's why you guys don't take probiotic capsules and tablets. It's part of your everyday diet." You know, it makes sense. You know, what was it? Let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. End of story, right? You can drop the mic on that one, Natalie, right there.
Well, with that being said, thank you so much, Natalie, for speaking with us today and for participating in our podcast series. We're going to wrap things up here, but before doing so, I'd like to remind our listeners that David and I are doing a series of episodes, so stay tuned. And this was so much fun, and I'm excited to dive into other food topics. And thank you again, Natalie. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. You're a rock star. I wish this lasted longer.
Thank you so much. I so enjoyed the conversation.
Have a great day.
You too.